Hello, wrestling fans. Breaking friggin' news. First off, I'm Steve Fall with my good friend Justin Rich. Rich, how you doing today?
Doing good, doing good. How are you doing?
Oh my, what a breaking news day. We're not going to talk about all of them. Let's talk about the Sasha Banks story right now because Raj, my friend from WrestlingInc.com has reported that Sasha Banks has been released by the WWE. Now, there has not been any clarification from the WWE about this at all. I know Sean Ross Sapp is working on that as well. There's a lot of people working on all the angles of what is actually happening. But right now, according to Raj, Sasha Banks no longer a WWE employee. Go back a few months ago, it feels like a year ago now, Sasha Banks and Naomi walked out on an episode of Raw. They didn't like the decision that was going to be made for their characters. They walked out. Now this story, dude, first off, do you believe this story is true?
I'm usually a person that's like, where there's smoke, there's fire. When it comes to wrestling Twitter and especially like wrestling news, you kind of got to take it with a grain of salt unless it comes from certain people that have been very reputable in their reporting and like making sure, like, let me confirm things before I put it out there. So for me, coming from Wrestling Inc. and from Raj, he's not going to put something out there that's going to be like, not have any substance to it because especially when it comes to someone like Sasha Banks, where whether you like her, whether you hate her, whether you feel indifferent about her, she's someone in wrestling that gets people talking. And she's like a news magnet that someone's going to have an opinion on her regardless. And there's a reason why she trends even when she's just living her best life.
Okay.
So if something like this surfaces, there's usually substance to it. And then it's like you said, it goes back to when her and Naomi walked off allegedly on Raw and they've been indefinitely suspended and everything leading up to this, where there still hasn't been a conclusion on that. We still don't know if they're coming back, when they're coming back. We have yet to hear from Sasha. We barely heard Naomi say anything outside of 2 or 3 tweets.
Yeah.
So it's still like a very raw situation where, Sasha has a very rabid fan base that people sometimes don't really get. Like people genuinely care about her. So when her name pops up, it's like, oh, there's news. Who we need to know. We need to know. So I think there's some smoke to it because I don't think they would put that out there if there wasn't something there.
Yeah, this is true. And there's a lot surrounding Sasha Banks, as you brought up her fan base, where if you try to insult her, you're gonna get in trouble with that fan base. They are vicious. And that's passion. That's passion. They are vicious. And I wonder if this story is true about her and the WWE, will this passionate group of people follow with her? Will they go to the next group? Because it's been kind of proven, except for John Cena, where if you leave the company and you go off to go make a TV show or a movie or whatever, you kind of fall off the face of the earth. And it's not in the wrestling world, at least. And for instance, Edge was on a show for like 7 seasons.
Yeah.
It wasn't like wrestling fans are like, did you see that show starring Edge? So I wonder if the Sasha Banks thing is true. Are they going to follow her to the next adventure she's on? But as you brought up, Raj pretty much has never disappointed with news, and his sources are saying that Sasha Banks is no longer with the WWE. But rumors have run rampant since that night that her and Naomi walked out. One was that Sasha Banks is difficult to work with. That's a narrative that has been put out there from a few different people, because we have to go back to even the story of the night Bayley and Sasha Banks lost their women's tag team titles. The rumors were running rampant. They were on the ground kicking and screaming. She proved that wrong on the Stone Cold podcast, where she said that's not true. Was she upset? Yes, she was upset. But was she on the ground kicking and screaming? No. But that we'll have to see what happens here, because it seems that sometimes a pattern's being built, as in Sasha Banks versus Bianca Belair, SummerSlam. We still don't know what the hell Sasha Banks was doing that day and why she didn't compete against Bianca, a WrestleMania rematch. And have you, honestly, I haven't seen any stories ever about even an inkling of what that day was about. Have you heard anything about that?
Not whatsoever. I have my assumptions. I don't think it's anything to where, she didn't feel like wrestling that day. I think it could have been, if you're asking me personally why I think she didn't show, it could be COVID related, only because They were very mum about when people got COVID for like at least a year in WWE. They wouldn't say when someone was out with, COVID-like symptoms or actually tested positive. They were very hush hush on that. They just disappeared and reappeared, especially at that time where COVID was really strong in this country.
Yeah.
So they were very, very quiet. So that's always been my guess. That's just me speculating, but that's me. That's always been me because there's just the track record of they've never announced it before or during that time.
Sure. The first time I remember someone being announced was Drew McIntyre, and they said it on TV because they wanted to control that story. They didn't want anyone to think the idea, because I remember there was a joke from Taz calling it a sloppy shop. And so at the time, it was like, if you have COVID, that means you're doing something wrong. That's what it felt like from everybody's perspective. If you sneezed, everyone thought you had COVID. It's like, no, I actually just, I have sniffles. And they're like, nah.
And one thing WWE is very good at is when it's injury related, they put that out there immediately. Like you knew immediately when Bayley had the knee injury was out, or when Cody Rhodes has the torn pec. They're very quick to put out someone's injured. This is the timetable they're going to be out. They're not going to compete at this show. We're going to adjust from that. They had at least a couple of weeks to about a month to really adjust from Sasha and Bianca if it was an injury, which cancels that out, because then you had weeks that we could have audibled it, but they waited until the last second to see if maybe we can pull this off.
Right. I always thought it was a vaccination issue. I remember hearing rumors about Sasha Banks not being vaccinated, and whatever, you do what you want to do. But if the policy was in the arena that you had to be vaccinated to be inside, well, then maybe she isn't vaccinated, and that was the issue at that point. So the narrative, it seems slowly building, is Sasha Banks is difficult to work with. That's some narrative. Obviously the other narrative is just she's sick and tired of being second fiddle. We were talking off camera a little while ago that I interviewed Ariana Andrew, formerly Cameron, and she pretty much brought up that Sasha Banks is the one who pulled Naomi out of the building, was like, you're coming with me. Let's go. Get out of here. Let's go. So there's a lot of interesting pieces. It's like a puzzle right now. We don't have all the pieces, but we certainly have a picture that's being developed, and it seems that Sasha Banks is done with the WWE, and obviously she can't use that name, Sasha Banks. That's a WWE trademark. Mercedes, I think, on her Instagram and her Twitter, she has started putting her real name there, I think for strategy, because she saw something coming, and maybe she always was planning on leaving. This is very interesting because it's like Sasha Banks, she's one of the 4 horsewomen. Like, that's like when Dean Ambrose, Moxley left in the Shield. Like, you couldn't reform these things because they're gone. It's like a generation of fans grew up on this. Well, Sasha Banks, like, are they just gonna erase all of Bayley's history?
I mean, good luck trying to erase Sasha's history, because first off, Sasha's been in a lot of first ever matches in WWE and especially NXT. She's your first women's main event in NXT with the Iron Man match with Bayley. She's your first WWE pay-per-view main event with the Hell in a Cell with Charlotte. She's 3 out of 4 women's Hell in a Cell matches have Sasha Banks in it. So unless you're going to play Bianca versus Bayley over and over again, you got to erase that. Your first ever women's Royal Rumble, Sasha was your number 1 and your Iron Man that entire match. You
main event of WrestleMania. But actually, Kristen Weber main event of WrestleMania, and they kind of, erased that. So I guess they can erase Sasha Banks as well. Oh, thank you, froze. Gotta love the internet, folks. Gotta love the internet.
Hold on.
Folks, technical difficulties happen. He's returned, folks. So you brought it up. All the first things Sasha Banks has done, it's going to be very hard to erase from history. But yet Hulk Hogan was erased for a while, then brought back. It was like, it's very interesting that how that happens, where you're no longer in the company and they're like, well, we have so many memories, we don't have to bring up yours.
I think it's just harder with hers because she's very intertwined with, you can't talk about the history of women's wrestling, especially this last 7 years, without mentioning her name. That means you get rid of WrestleMania 32, which was the women's triple threat, which got everyone talking. You get rid of WrestleMania 37, the first ever two African American women main eventing at WrestleMania. You get rid of your Hell in a Cell matches. You get rid of the first ever women's Royal Rumble. You get rid of the first two women's Elimination Chamber matches where they had the fatal six-way for the title and then the women's tag team titles. There's a lot of firsts that you lose when you take Sasha Banks' name out of WWE.
Yeah, but they can just show clips of someone beating her up versus her winning the match or her, dominating. But yeah, it's very interesting that right now this is happening because it reminds me of when maybe a year and a half ago when I read Bray Wyatt got laid off. And I was like, I'm sorry, what just happened? It's like one of your favorite characters from a TV show being murdered and they can't return. And you're like, how is this even happening? This person has been with you for so long and has made you so much money, like intertwined. So Sasha Banks being let go kind of makes me underneath the assumption that nobody is not expendable. Everybody can be fired. Even Roman Reigns can be fired. Like it's shocking. It is shocking right now to be sitting here saying, "Oh yeah, Sasha Banks shouldn't work there no more." And we don't know about the situation of the backstage moment that happened on that episode of Raw that really probably was the bullet in the chamber, because obviously there was something going on before this. Because I interviewed Sasha Banks about a month and a half ago, maybe two, and I asked her, were you supposed to fight Charlotte at WrestleMania? The rumor was online, Ronda Rousey was a last minute thing, and you were supposed to fight Charlotte. And she kind of said no, but at the same time, it seemed like she was kind of leaning to a yes. So it was very interesting that possibly Sasha Banks is supposed to be your face of SmackDown, but Ronda showed up, and they were like, "Oh, Ronda's great, she's better," and suddenly Sasha got pushed to a tag team. So I guess we'll find out.
I'm not surprised you took that route. As someone that attended some of those shows at that time, they had been working each other, Sasha Banks and Charlotte Flair, in dark matches and house shows. I was ringside for a SmackDown where they main evented in a dark match. So they had been working each other since before Survivor Series. This actually goes back to like October, November-ish, where Sasha and Charlotte had really been working with each other. And the feelings from the crowds and the feelings from just watching is like, this is going to lead to something big. The same way when Becky first came back and was doing a house show, she was working Bianca, and they just kept working each other, and that's when they were feuding. And it was like, you could see that they're laying out the blueprint for Bianca and Becky at WrestleMania, Sasha and Charlotte at WrestleMania. And then somewhere between Sasha's ankle injury at a house show and the rumors of Ronda coming back, that's where it kind of like, I don't know if they pivoted or Ronda was always going to be coming back and that was going to be the match. And Sasha was just keeping Charlotte busy up until Rumble season and Mania season. But going back to October, they had actually been working towards that. So you could tell why Sasha was kind of a little like upset that she didn't get that match at Mania and got put in the tag team. It was like, yeah, because you've kind of been working towards that towards October. And all of a sudden, it's just a hard pivot.
The term plans change is a common thread from many people who work there and people who don't work there anymore, that you're doing one thing and then someone just like, let's do something completely different. So as of right now, we do not know. The WWE has not confirmed that Sasha Banks has been released. All we know is Raj from Wrestling.com has reported this, and other wrestling websites, who usually are right, have come forward and they're confirming these things and they're saying, yes, what he's saying is true. But as the next 24 hours roll on, we're going to find out what the hell's going on. Maybe the Sasha Banks story is a good story to get out to bury another story about Vince McMahon, but that's for a different time. Justin Rich, Thank you so much for being here talking about Sasha Banks, because we're going to find out what the hell is actually happening within maybe the next 24 hours. I don't know. So thank you for being here. I've been Steve Fall. He's been Justin Rich. We'll see you next time, folks. Breaking news. Sometimes it's hard to do. Bye.